When you teach the dog a command sit, first of all, you should teach it this motion so that the dog could allow you to make it sit. Secondly, the dog should understand that after having sat, it should keep sitting for a while. Sit.
Алексей, а в чем смысл
Alex, what is the
движения?
idea
Можно
of
его
this
полностью
motion? Can you
описать, как
describe
для
it?
дурака?
I'll tell you later. Now I want to explain this differently.
Хорошо?
At the beginning, the dog understands this motion of getting sit, that you can make it sit. That's it. Then we tell it walk, and this untrained dog jumps up and is ready to work again. You can make it sit again. Then the dog should understand that it's sitting for a while, that it didn't just sit but keeps sitting. If the dog is sitting for a while, you can teach it the command at a distance. Sit. Down. Sit. The complexity level depends on the distance you're working at and the surroundings. If the dog learned this, you can teach it the command sit when it's active, when there's something that the dog wants to get. It can be a toy, meat, or another dog. Sit. No. Give it to me. Sit. Here you have like a trained dog. No. Give it to me. Sit. But it can't help moving when you distract it. Sit. This is much more difficult for the dog. If it's running or walking with another dog, walk. Go ahead. Sit. To sit down while moving is more difficult. So, how are you going to teach the dog? Before teaching, you should understand that the dog needs to want something. Either it wants food or a toy, or it wants to be talked to be stroked. Such a dog won't work long and hard just to be praised and stroked. It needs some real reward. First of all, the dog should be motivated. It should trust you. When you can touch it or do something with it, the matter isn't that it won't bite you, but that it feels comfortable. It doesn't strain, has no fear, and doesn't play with your hands. It just lets you exist in the situation and control. Make sit and lie. It's advisable for the dog to accept spurts of a lead. When being pulled, it should understand that it has to move where you pull. If the dog wants to eat, trust your hands, accept the lead, then you can teach it. Bring some treat to its nose, then move the treat upwards, the dog sat down. Pull the lead, push onto the coupling, the dog sat down. Bring the treat to its nose, pull the lead, control it, and give the treat. Or you can bring the treat over its nose and push onto the coupling. There are some unusual methods. When you bend its back limbs, but nobody worked in such a way with this dog, so it's unfamiliar for it. When you train your dog sitting down regularly, it stops struggling and understands where you pull it and what for. That is why you need to make less efforts. The dog starts to work when you make the first motions. You see it's working, and it works only if the dog gets the treat. That is, it knows what will happen next. It carries out all you want from it because it will get food or a toy. The dog will be ready for commands to be brought into. The dog tries to understand in advance what you want from it, so you start to work with the dog with a combination of a command. First, there is the command. That is a notice about what will happen next. Then you force. Sit. Command and pull the lead. Stay. The dog stood up without moving your leg. Down, sit, down. While laying, you can make the dog sit with the help of food. Down. You can make it sit with the help of the treat and kicking at its front limbs. Down. You can make it sit using the treat and pulling the lead. It doesn't matter. The main thing is that the dog made a motion that we try to connect with the command.
Да, Алексей, вот
Alex,
какой
how to
момент.
pull the lead
Можно,
right?
как правильно
In what
руками ее
direction?
дергать,
In
в
agreement
каком
with the dog's
направлении, вот по поводу
anatomy.
анатомии
What
собаки,
are
вот
the
эти
main
ошибки.
mistakes? There are two methods to make it sit. It's standing, here are front and back limbs. You can push onto the croup and the dog will sit onto its back limbs. Or it can move off a bit and will sit anyways. It's better to choose at once the method of training. The dog will understand it has to sit and you will form right motions. What mistakes can arise? When the dog sits down, the top of the body goes backwards, the back limbs go forward. If you pull the lead up and push here, you like break its coupling. The back limbs bend, the dog doesn't like it. It hurts. So when you say sit, the dog links this word to unpleasant sensations. That's why at first you should know yourself how to make the dog sit, to familiarize it with what you do when it sits down easily, when you sit the dog easily. Then you can bring in the command
То
sit.
есть надо за
So
поводок тянуть
you
не
need to
вверх,
pull the
а
lead not
вверх и
only up
назад.
but backwards as well. No, there can be different variants. You can pull up, but the rump should go here, or the dog will move it itself. Flint, sit, sit. I pull up, sit, sit. Good boy. You can push here, and the dog moves backwards. You should push here or pull here. Or you should understand how the dog moves. You can use both the lead and the hand. You'll influence double. But don't act against its anatomy. Pulling the lead up and pushing onto the croup, you're like cheering this poor dog. This is a torture. After you taught the dog the command sit, that is, it understands what this command means, you teach it how to sit down while moving. The dog is walking around and we command sit. You influence on it and make it sit. When the pet learned that as well, train the endurance, or this can be the second lesson. Sit. I gave a command and moved away. It's very important to not move off far, because you lose control of the dog. It stands up, moves off, you catch it, but it's convinced that if you're far, you cannot control the situation. Don't give the dog food for thought, since dogs are clever. Don't let the pet understand that if you're around, you can control everything. But once you're far, it can do whatever it wants. It's better to move off from the dog on a short distance for a long period of time, in order for her to memorize, to acquire experience. If you're told to sit, you must sit, and it's pointless to get up. When the dog gets up, it's necessary to react immediately and not to try to make it sit with words. You just teach it now. Form an idea that after the command sit, the dog must sit straight away and not resist. Simply said, you form the reflex. Until it's not formed, there is no point to use it in the situation when the dog is distracted. If you show the dog these two situations, when you're around, it must obey, but when you're far, it doesn't. There can appear problems with while teaching other commands like down, stay, or fetch. The command sit is the first, so it's important for further training and mutual relations with your dog.
Алексей, а можно такой
Alex,
вопрос?
what if I
А вот
say
если я
sit,
своей, например,
move
говорю
away by
сидеть,
5
отошел
meters,
метров на 5,
the dog tries to lay down.
она пытается лечь. Я сразу
I
же ору
shout
сидеть,
sit,
бегу к ней и
run
даю
towards
пенделя
my dog
ногой.
and kick it.
Вот это
Is
повторение
it okay
команды
to
сидеть
repeat
строгим
the
тоном,
command
это
sit in a
нормальное
loud voice
воздействие
in
в
order
данном
to make
случае,
the
если я
dog
бегу
sit
к
again?
собаке, чтобы ее обратно...
When you communicate with the dog, there is a mutual relation. And there is information you want to carry down to the dog. Dogs don't communicate with each other in such a way when a certain word means a certain motion. They are creatures of emotions and prefer to build mutual relations. So, if you command down threateningly, it means the proper motion. If you command stay threateningly as well, this threat means that the dog will lie down instead of staying, just because it will obey. That is, there appears contradiction. The same story with the command sit. Imagine that the dog respects you a lot and you are strict with the pet. So when you shout sit, this scares the dog. This is why it lies down, or can even move off. On the one hand, you should be strict enough in order for the dog to understand that you want it to sit. But on the other hand, do not scare the dog without necessity. When the pet gets scared, it needs to decide who is in charge.
То есть лучше не
So it's
кричать,
better
а
not to
подойти к ней и
shout, but to
посадить ее
come up to the
руками.
dog and make it sit with the hands. It's better to come and sit, but quietly and firmly, in a way that is appropriate for your dog. There are dogs that understand the command said in the strict way, and there are dogs that don't need that. It depends on the character of the dog and the mutual relations with the master. Anyways, it's advisable to move off on a short distance for a long period of time. 2 steps is okay. If the dog tries to get up, that is, it bends forward, and the pet raises its rump, you'll be able to react immediately. You can usually witness the following. The master looks at the dog getting up, then looks at the pet threateningly in order to make it feel wrong. The dog begins moving, goes away somewhere. The master takes the arms backwards and tries to come and sit, 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 but the dog keeps walking. Afterwards, the owner brings the dog back and make it sit. The dog understands that all these words and threats don't mean anything. But if you grab the dog at once and make it sit, it won't have a choice. As a result, the dog reacts to strength, not to words. That is, if you want your dog to obey, you should back the words with some force. But if you don't need any obedience, you can keep saying a lot of words with no force. They will mean anything. After the dog learned that it has to keep sitting when you move off, and at the same time you teach it the command stay when move off. Stay, down. This dog knows the commands and is concentrated, so I teach it the command on a distance. Act in such a way. Command and come up to the dog. Sit, come up and make it sit. If you came up to the dog and it didn't sit, make it do it. If the dog carried out the command, down, come up and stroke it. You need to keep in mind that you have to come up to the dog anyways. Sit, good boy. Stay. If you say sit, but the dog doesn't obey, there is no point to just stay and look at it. Sit. Come up to the dog, give the command once again, but strictly, and make it sit. Come. After you taught the dog how to work on a distance, bring in gestures. Sit. The gesture is like a symbol of superiority. What kind of gestures are there? Sit, down, stay, raise up your hand. Why do you use them? Sit when you brought the treat to the puppy or pulled the lead. Down when you pulled the lead. Sit. Or when you made it lie down like this. Sit. Or when you lowered your hand like that with the treat. The command stay means the motion when you made the dog stand up. This is why you should keep impacting on the dog using the gestures. When mastering the command down with the help of the gesture, don't wave your arm like this. Stay. You should do this. Down. Sit. Come up to the dog and stroke it. Stay. Come. Sit. Sit. First you gesture, say stay, and then make the dog stand up. Same story with the command sit. Down. Command sit, gesture, and pull the lead. Sit. Down. Or like this. Sit. Good boy. Down. Or you can use the foot. Sit. Good boy. The dog should associate this gesture with some force, either with correction or the treat, food or a toy. While teaching, you can use not only food, but toys as well. Walk. Sit. Good boy. Give it to me. The toy is like forcing, because you bring it over the dog's nose. It raises the head and sits down. At the same time, the toy is the reward. Give it to me. Also, you can use the toy while teaching the command down. You should use it properly though, because if the dog is high, it can bite your hand. This is why it's better to use food at the very beginning. The dog's following the treat. This is what we actually want from it. The dog's following the food and you keep teaching it.
Мы выбираем вот конкретное движение.